Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Today we will start Surah Rahman summary explanation based on themes. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Let's talk about the first theme of mercy in this surah. Allah's name and attribute of Ar-Rahman, the most merciful, is chosen here instead of the name Allah because it is through His mercy for His creation that He provides guidance through the Quran. The center verse 3 of this group of verses highlights that Ar-Rahman created mankind, and verse 2 and 4 pair to mention two significant points. Ar-Rahman taught the Quran and Ar-Rahman taught speech to mankind, making us the most honored of His creation. The speech of mankind is of the highest form of communication among His creation and displays a superior form of intellect. Other creations, such as jinn and animals, may communicate but are not empowered with the ability of speech and intellect like mankind. Verse 5 talks about the precision in which the sun and the moon follow their path. These verses show that the whole system of the universe is in a perfect synchrony and also serves as a sign of the Creator. And verse 6 shows that all of us, Allah's creation, are in His obedience, worship, and complete submission. This contrasts with mankind and jinn, who have been given the freedom of will to obey and worship. We can see from verses 7 through 9 that Allah created the nature in perfect balance and scale. The word mizan, meaning scale, is used 3 times as the ending of all these verses. This scale in nature, al-mizan, has been compared to the scale of justice. So any change in this balance would disrupt nature. Similarly, injustice destroys this perfect balance. So we have to be careful of not committing injustice in any shape or form with regards to the wealth and property of others. After the surah sets the tone for the submissiveness of nature to its creator and establishes its perfect balance and harmony, and compares this to the importance of justice, the next set of verses 10 to 25 now move on to discussing the numerous favors bestowed upon mankind and the jinn included. The word ala'i is repeated frequently, and this word could mean favor, blessings, bounties, or power. After mentioning an important favor or power of Allah, it ends with a rhetorical question. How can we deny His favor or manifestations of His power that we experience in the universe? Verses 10 through 13 mention how Allah created the earth with its creatures for the benefit of mankind. It highlights the beautiful creation of the fruits with their coverings, grains, and seeds. The shapes and color not only beautify nature and appeal to our senses, but also serve to feed us. So after all this, we are questioned on how can we deny its creator. Verses 14 through 16 discuss that Allah created mankind from clay, like that used in pottery. And He created the jinns from the tip of the flame of a smokeless fire. We can reflect that the jinn's medium of creation may be superior, but mankind's intellect is superior. We also note that all these verses address both mankind and jinn, since both of these creations are accountable. This is different from the other creations of Allah, like nature mentioned before, which is always obedient and submissive and is not accountable. Now we see here that the word ala'i in the rhetorical question is referring to the manifestation of Allah's power in the creation of jinn and mankind. Previous verses established that Allah is the creator of the universe, its perfect balance, and all the creatures within it. Now verses 17 through 18 establish his lordship and ownership over his entire creation and the universe. So here, Ala'i again denotes the manifestation of his power. Before in the surah, the universe was mentioned as obedient, synchronized, and submissive to its creator. There is a perfect scale of balance in nature. Now, creation of water is mentioned as a sign of its creator. Even water, which is part of nature, shows synchrony and obedience in not crossing over the salt and sweet water barriers. This is just like the perfect balance mentioned in the universe earlier. All of this synchrony and obedience in nature points to the one creator. Earlier in the surah, the creation of the earth and its benefits were mentioned. Now in verses 22 through 25, the benefits of the sea are mentioned. Out of the sea, beautiful jewels are made and the ships can sail, bringing in numerous benefits for mankind. Verses 26 to 30 mention that all of Allah's creation are dependent and will perish. Only Allah is independent and immortal. All of his creation are dependent on Allah, and every day he answers to our needs. This idea serves as the center of this surah, after which the topic will change to accountability and the Day of Judgment. This group of verses, 31 through 36, is discussing accountability for both men and jinns. Any crossing of the boundaries within the earth or in space occurs only with his authority and will. Here the punishment of fire or smoke shows that Allah's speech is directed to both mankind and jinn. So here Ala'i again denotes to Allah's power over the universe and to hold us accountable for our deeds. In verses 37 through 38, we see some description of the Day of Judgment. The sky will show a reddish tint once it starts to fall apart, as the perfect synchrony described earlier in nature will now be unbalanced, unstable, and eventually be destroyed. On that day, time for excuses and denial will be gone. Instead, the state of the wrongdoers will be visibly marked by their appearances. We know from other verses that this contrasts with the light that will appear from the believers. Verses 43 to 45 discuss the hellfire that was denied by the disbelievers. Note, only one hellfire is mentioned, but in the next few verses, we will see pairs of paradise, Jannah, described in much detail. Again, we see that the word ala'i in the rhetorical question is referring to the manifestation of Allah's power and will in the creation and in the punishment of hellfire. Allah mentions that there will be two sets of gardens, Jannatan, for those who fear Allah. The first pair are mentioned in the dual theme which we are seeing throughout this surah, referring to both mankind and jinn. The second pair of Jannatan is also mentioned in dual theme. But the description of this pair is slightly different. In verse 62, Allah says, besides the first pair, there is another pair of gardens. Some interpret this pair as situated below the first pair, but dunihima does not necessarily mean lower. It can mean besides these two. I put the verses describing these two types of gardens side by side so we can easily compare and contrast. Let's start comparing the descriptions. The first type of garden will have trees with beautiful branches. The second type of garden is described as dark green in color. So far, we are seeing a variety in the two types of gardens. In the first garden, the springs are reported as flowing, tajriyan. And in the second type of garden, the springs are described as gushing forth, nadaqatan. The first type of garden bears every kind of fruit in pairs, zawjan. It is interesting that the word zawjan is used, which means pairs. And later we will see companions mentioned, implying that this garden will be primarily inhabited by the men and women of this earth as spouses. Zawjan is also used in Arabic for spouses. Also, in the first garden, all kinds of fruit exist in pairs, whereas in the second garden, a few types of fruits are specified. Again, we generally note that throughout the descriptions of these gardens, we see a repeat of the word ala'i to denote Allah's favor upon mankind and jinns to create this reward of paradise. In the first type of garden, the residents are reclining on couches lined with istabrak, which is thick silk brocade, and the fruits are lowered for easy reach. And in the second type of garden, the residents recline on green cushions. Again here, the green color is emphasized. Remember in the beginning we discussed how the second type of garden is dark green. So far we can conclude the second type of garden provides a different variety from the first. It has a green theme going on with a different variety of fruits and water springs. Almost sounds like a second vacation home, while the first one is where the spouses are living as companions with all kinds of fruit pairs hanging low to be reached easily. The first garden refers to chaste female companions of this world. But in the second garden, hurs are mentioned. We learn from hadith that hurs are themselves created as the rewards of paradise. They are not from the children of Adam. We also learn from hadith that the Muslim women of this world will be superior to the hurs. The rewards of paradise are created for mankind. So far in these descriptions, we found no evidence to show that the second garden is lower in rank than the first one, as some have stated. In fact, in Surah Waqia, the foremost are mentioned who are closest to Allah and they will have the hurs. This shows the highest level of Jannah provides this privilege of hurs as a reward. And verse 46 did say that those who truly feared Allah would have two gardens, Jannatan. So we can conclude that this second garden may be an extra privilege for the high-ranked residents of paradise. The second garden is described with varieties like a deep greenish theme with gushing instead of flowing springs. The first garden did not mention hurs but mentioned chaste companions, while the second garden did mention hurs. And Allah knows best. We see verse 60 poses another rhetorical question to show that the residents of the first garden earned this level of goodness due to the good they have done. We already covered verses 62 through 77, which contained description of the second type of garden. And the surah ends with verse 78, which glorifies Ar-Rahman, who creates and provides for his creation. And we see manifestations of his favor and power throughout this surah. If you have benefited, please like this video and subscribe to my channel for more videos. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.